I shall always be a priest of love, says D.S. Lawrence. Hello, good evening, and welcome to a new episode of Arguably the Reading Quest. I am Nishant. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about the complete poems of D.H. Lawrence, published at Wordsworth Poetry Library. The complete poems of D.H. Lawrence. So, Lawrence's reputation as a novelist has often meant that his achievements in poetry have failed to bring the recognition that it deserved. In literature, we often falls into that false dichotomy, often unconsciously or consciously, or some kind of conditioning, that if a writer is a poet, he is not a good novelist, or if he is a novelist, he is not a good dramatist, or if he is a good essayist, he is not a good novelist. So again, D.H. Lawrence's reputation has fallen somehow in a kind of false dichotomy, that whether he is a novelist or whether he is a poet. In this case, he is both. This edition brings together his collected poems in the form he himself has sanctioned. And this volume, contained two of his notebooks, which he was still writing poetry where he died in the year 1930. Lawrence, when it comes to lyricism, when it comes to the kind of English that Oxybridge people used, and his mastery of the local dialects, and his beautiful, English collocations in use, his beautiful images, sensual imagery, made sure that his reputation as a poet is permanently, secured in the greater canons of English literature, especially the Victorian and post-Victorian. D.H. Lawrence also becomes important, that D.H. Lawrence stood in sharp contradistinction to two major poets of his own time, perhaps a little greater than his own reputation was, as critics say, that is Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot. So, Lawrence always disliked the idea that one cannot write in free verse. As T.S. Eliot famously said, that no man is free to write in free verse if at all he want to do a good job in poem. Here, D.H. Lawrence stood at a challenge to T.S. Eliot, in which he has looked for his aspirations in Walt Whitman, another American transcendentalist poet. And he considered Walt Whitman his master, and he took aspirations from the writing of Walt Whitman to write in free verse. D.H. Lawrence also stood as a poet who has written poetry wherein he himself, his personality was very overwhelmingly present in each and every words and lines and stanzas and meters that he devised and wrote. Whereas T.S. Eliot always said that there should be an impersonality in the writing, that the poet should not be present, writing should be impersonal. No wonder T.S. Eliot did a terrific job in The Wasteland, where, the impersonality doctrine was so beautifully, so masterfully demonstrated. But D.H. Lawrence stood in sharp contradistinction to the theory of impersonality of T.S. Eliot. D.H. Lawrence says that a poet should very much be present. Had we known a little bit more about the lives of Shakespeare, his poems and sonnets and drama would have made a little more sense, would have mellowed down to us in a little more better ways. That is what D.H. Lawrence has said. Lawrence, this poetry collection, this anthology is especially valuable as it is a lower priced edition, and the texts are quite authentic with lots of references and annotations. Also, the introduction is given by David Ellis of the University of Kent at Canterbury. I would like to read a few, excerpts from the introduction part that will help you understand, the characteristic of Lawrence's poetry in particular. Also, what was one more characteristic about Lawrence's poetry was that Lawrence also talked about the natural worlds of birds and beasts and flowers, Okay, because he more clearly recognizes the difference and in some cases the unbridgeable gap between himself and its other inhabitants, whether they be animal, vegetable or mineral. Yet language is a distinctively human attribute, so that any writing or talking about nature will inevitably impose on the non-human environment some degree of human concern. This is evident through one of the major triumphs of the collection, the six tortoise poems. So the acuteness of the observation in these poems is very remarkable. And in the first of them, a baby tortoise has never been so vividly evoked. Please listen. So here Lawrence is, describing a baby tortoise. You draw your head forward slowly from your little wimple and set forward, slow dragging on your four pined toes, rowing slowly forward. Whither away, small bird? Question mark. Rather like a baby walking its limbs, except that you make slow, ageless progress and a baby makes none. The touch of the sun excites you, and the long ages and the lingering chill make you pause to yawn. Opening your impervious mouth, suddenly beak-shaped and very wide, like some suddenly gaping pincers, soft red tongue and hard thin gums, then close the wedge of your little fountain fronts, your face, baby tortoise. So the tortoise poem illustrates, as well as any other, the skill with which Lawrence is able to manipulate his free verse form, shortening and lengthening of lines to control a poem's pace, constructing a sequence of rhythmic units without failing into regular stanzic form, and skillfully mingling formal diction into diction with the vernacular. Variation in tone is very important to them, with wit and humor, not the most notable feature of his early poetry, playing a major role. So you see, staggered by the lack of family feeling between the female tortoise and her offspring, D.H. Lawrence exclaims, "It is no use my saying to him in an emotional voice, 'This is your mother. She laid you when you were an egg,' adding slyly at the beginning of the next movement, he does not even trouble to answer, 'Woman, what have I to do with thee?'" At this example illustrate the poem benefits also from Lawrence's dramatic sense. It is as Lawrence describes, or rather creates, the drama of Tortoise that the tendency of language to make us all inescapably anthropomorphic becomes especially evident. What he admires is the way in which, as soon as the baby is born, deposited on the ground as if he were no more than droppings, he is independent, a courageous explorer of his environment, untrammeled by family obligations and feelings. Yet Lawrence's achievement in other literary form is not the only reason for the uncertainty of his reputation as a poet. Another is that in his breaking away from the route indicated by T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound, as I have said, he never became a modernist, even though several of his poems appeared in Imagist anthology during the war, and it was modernism which was to dominate poetry for many decades after the war was over. As far at least as critiques were concerned, it is possible to isolate two principal ways in which Lawrence's revolutionary poetic practice differed from that of a modernist. So he was dismissive of Eliot's theory of impersonality, and he was not very concerned with the Pound's, classical austerity with which he wants to return back to the poems of, the classical age of English poetry. The commitment, and he was very spontaneous. It was not the technique that he was interested in. Rather, T.H. Lawrence said that I am interested in very much a man alive. I am for all the life there is. I am not for the technique. So the commitment to spontaneity not only meant that Lawrence could not sympathize with Pound's emphasis on artistry, but also that he has no time at all for Eliot's celebration of impersonality. He rightly identifies Gustave Flaubert as the modern originator of impersonality doctrine, but felt no admiration for the success with which this writer was supposed to have removed all traces of his own voice from his iconic novel Madame Bovary. Self-effacement or self-disguise he tended to regard as a subtle form of conceit, and the classical precedents, which were sometimes evoked in defense of impersonality, he regarded as a cowardice. Okay. So, in contrast to Eliot, Lawrence felt that since all literature in essence was self-expression, the more openly and frankly confessional a poet was, the better it is. Exposing to reader what you really felt and thought was to him more important than art itself. I'd like to read a few excerpts from his poems, especially his very well-known, slightly not so Puritan, slightly on the sensual side, that is figs. So Lawrence says the proper way to eat a fig in society is to split it in four, holding it by stump, and open it so that it is glistering, rosy, moist, honeyed, heavy-petaled, four-petaled flower. Then you throw away the skin, which is like a four-sepal calyx, after you have taken off the blossom with your lips. But the vulgar way is just to put your mouth to the crack and take out the flesh in one bite. Every fruit has its secret. The fig is a very secretive fruit. As you see it stand growing, you feel at once it is symbolic. And it seems male, but when you come to know it better, you agree with the Romans, it is female. The Italian vulgarly says it stands for the female part, the fig fruit, the fissure, the yoni, the wonderful moist conductivity towards the center. Involved, interned, the flowering all inward and warm, fibrilled but once orifice, the fig, the horseshoe, the squash blossom symbol. There was a flower that flowered inward, wormward. Now there is a fruit that, like a ripe womb. It was always a secret. That is how it should be. Female should always be a secret, folded upon itself and secret unutterable, and milky sap, sap that curdles milk and makes ricotta, sap that smells strange on your fingers that even goats won't taste it, folded upon itself, enclosed like any Mohammedan woman, its nakedness all within walls, its flowering forever unseen. One small way of excess only, and this close curtained from the light, fig, fruit of female mystery, covert and inward, Mediterranean fruit, with your covert nakedness, where everything happens invisible, flowering and fertilization and fruiting, in the inwardness of your you, that I will never see till it is finished, and you are overripe, and you burst to give up your ghost. The year is fallen. I'm skipping many other lines. I'm just reading the last part. The year is fallen overripe, the year of our women. The year of our women is fallen overripe, the secret is laid bare. The rottenness soon sets in, the year of our women is fallen overripe. One more poem of my interest. The poem is titled New Year's Night. Now you are mine, tonight at last I say it. You are a dove I have brought for sacrifice, and tonight I slay it. Here in my arms my nakedness, my naked sacrifice. Death, do you hear in my arm I am bringing my offering, bought at great price. She's a silvery dove worth more than all I have got. Now I offer her up to the ancient, inexorable God, who knows me not. Look, she's a wonderful dove, without blemish or spot. I sacrifice all in her, my last of the world, pride, strength, all the lot. See this poem titled Valentine's Night. Here you see his control over language and diction and rhyme and meter. You shadow and flame, you interchange, you death in the game. I again repeat, you shadow and flame, you interchange, you death in the game. Now I gather you up, now I put you back like a poppy in its cup. And so you are a maid again, my darling, but new, unafraid. My love, my blossom, a child, almost the flower in the bud, again undefiled. and yet a woman knowing, all good, evil, both in one blossom blowing. Now, the last poem of this series that I would like to read out to you is a poem titled Elegy. Of course, when we talk of elegy, we always think of an elegy written in a country's churchyard by Thomas Gray. But here, this elegy is very different and quite melancholic, with a lot of imagery of nature here you see. The sun, immense and rosy, must have sunk and become extinct. The night you closed your eyes forever against me. Grey days and wan redrawings, downings. Since then, with fritter of flowers, day varies with me its ostentation and foundings. Still you left me the nights, the great dark glittery window, the bubble hemming this empty existence with lights. Still in the vast hollow, like a breath in a bubble, spinning, brushing the stars, goes my soul that skims the bounds like a swallow. I can look through the film of the bubble night to where you are. Through the film I can almost touch you. That is what the elegy was about. So guys, I hope you know what to expect from D.H. Lawrence. And those who have read Lawrence, Rainbow Woman in Love, and those who have known Lawrence for his reputation as Lady Chatterley's lovers should not miss out on Lawrence's poetry. He was as great a poet as a novelist he was. Happy reading. If you have still not liked, shared and subscribed my YouTube channel, Arguably The Reading Quest, please do that. Thank you all of you.